Welcome to Impolite MTG.
Where we're going to talk about Magic the Gathering.
And we're not always going to be nice about it.
I'm Vorin Chris, no Fort Raider.
I'm Dave, Guru of S'mores. So hey Chris, why do you tend to play Chromatic Lantern in your decks?
Mostly for color fixing in 4 or 5 color decks. Why do you ask?
Well, what if I told you that Chromatic Lantern had some hidden value to it?
Oh yeah? What would that be?
It's turning your brain off when tapping for mana. This gives you more mental bandwidth so that you can focus on the rest of the game.
Well, it does sound nice not having to think about colors while I'm storming off.
God damn it, Chris. We've been over this. Not every deck needs to be a storm deck, buddy. Look, you have a problem. Put the grape shot down and come home, okay?
Anyways, tell me more about this card that can turn my brain off.
So, with Chromatic Lantern, and other cards can do it too, like we now have Chromatic Orrery and the World Tree, these cards basically say stop worrying about color fixing and the colors of your spells. And what that allows you to do is like, okay, every land is a command tower. Instead of going, all right, I need 2 blue and a colorless for this spell. And at some point I'm going to need 2 red for that spell. It's literally just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, cool, I can do the thing. And it's a part of your brain that gets switched off by having Chromatic Lantern. And Dryad of the Elysian Grove is another one that'll let you do it now too.
Prismatic Omen as well.
Oh, yep, there you go. Where you just get to turn off your brain's color filter system. By turning that part of your brain off, you're freeing up mental bandwidth so that you can focus on other aspects of the game, like other parts of your turn. You get to streamline your playing, and there's a lot of value in that kind of thing. Because what do we always say in Commander? That you typically want your mana rocks to be 2 mana, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. And then we want our 3 mana rocks to do something really, really good. Now, I think being able to turn off your brain and focus on more of your turn, I think that's worth an extra mana, don't you think?
I mean, yeah, I guess. It really depends on what you're wanting to do with the deck, though. Some decks don't really need it. Some decks have enough color fixing to begin with. But, yeah, in other decks, like Send Triplets, like shutting your brain off and not having to worry about, like, too many weird mana rocks or other things, like, really helps you, like, play your opponent's spells.
Yeah, not only that, but in something like Send Triplets, you actually want to be able to tap for the colors you don't have because you're taking your opponent's stuff.
Yeah.
That's very much for sure. But also, like you said, 4 and 5 color decks. I even put it in 3 color decks if it's not a green deck, because it's still gonna ramp you. It's still a mana rock.
Sure.
And it's going to color fix you better than anything else. And like I said, it's that simple. I don't got to think about colors anymore. And I especially like it in like 3 color decks where, like, say you want to have like a spell with like 3 pips in it. It's a 2 black, black, black type of spell. You want to be able to make sure that you can hit all 3 of those blacks. Even in a 3 color deck, that can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. Or just by the turn that you're wanting to play it on, you're not there yet with 3 black.
I used to run it a lot in Niv-Mizzet Perun because of his 3 blue, 3 red casting costs.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the one time I did actually enjoy running it in a 2-color deck. Other than that, like I never really saw it necessary in 2-color.
Yeah, 2 color decks, I don't think it's necessary because if you have to sit there and think about how much colors you have, I'd say your mana base is probably off in that case. That's less a problem of like, oh, let me think about what colors of mana I have, and more like you didn't build your mana base correctly, so it's a different underlying problem.
I said you mentioned the World Tree earlier, but like what about other lands that kind of do something like what spells do?
Yeah, so like another really good one is Reliquary Tower. It literally just turns off the part of your brain where you got to think about how many cards you have in your hand.
Yeah.
As a Tatyova player, I go, oh, if I don't have Reliquary Tower or Thought Vessel out, I go, okay, if I do too much of what this deck wants to do, I'm going to be drawing a bunch of stuff and I'm going to be discarding a bunch of stuff. And in that deck, that's not always a problem because you can just ditch extra lands. If you've already got a bunch of lands in your hand, you draw a bunch more, you can just ditch a couple of the extras. But if you go too far on that, you're running out of a point where that's worth it. If I have Reliquary Tower or Thought Vessel out, I go, cool, draw as many cards as I want, and I don't got to think about the rest.
Yeah. The other thing I like about Reliquary Tower is Spellbook is a really old Magic card. I think I don't know the original set it came in, but for 0 mana, you had no maximum hand size.
Exactly.
In Commander, it eats up a spell slot in your deck, and you only have between 60 and maybe 63-ish spell slots in your entire deck. And giving up a spell slot just have no maximum hand size is terrible if that's all it does.
Yeah.
Reliquary Tower takes up one of your land slots. Perfect. No maximum hand size, don't need to think about it. And we do see this with other land cards as well. Like, there are other effects we can get that kind of do this.
Yeah, Mystic Sanctuary is a really good way to, get your instants and sorceries back.
Oh yeah, the castle cycle from Eldraine are really good. They don't take up a land slot, but you get card fixing with the blue one. You get card drawing with the black one. You can buff your creatures with the red.
Exactly. Yeah, they all do something pretty interesting. Yeah, and then so the problem with things like Spellbook or like these other effects is they're not bad effects, it's the opportunity cost. So there's the hidden value in those type of spells, what you're specifically getting by playing lands that do stuff. And this is why when you're building a deck, you probably want to look through lands that are in the colors that you're playing and see what utility lands exist in blue or white or black or so on, because you're getting an effect on a land and you're not losing a card slot, which is the opportunity cost.
Yeah, Mystic Sanctuary is actually a really good example of this, where if you have 3 islands in play, you get a 4th island now, but it can now bounce you a useful instant or sorcery back to your deck, and when you draw it, let's say it was a counterspell, you now have access to that counterspell again. If it's a draw spell, because you're not drawing your lands, all of a sudden you can now dig a little deeper and grab a actual land, hopefully.
And another card I really like is Halimar Depths.
Yeah, that's a great top deck fixer if you're running any sort of deck that cares about that.
Yeah.
Holy shit, do you really want that sort of effect in there?
Exactly. And for me, I play it in Yuriko.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not at the point where I care about my top deck manipulations, okay, if I play it turn 1, I can kind of smooth out my opening plays. Turn 1, I don't have a Soul Ring or whatever. I don't have anything to do. I go, all right, play this Halimar Depth, look at the top 3, rearrange them however I want. If the next best card was going to be, the third card down, you just moved it to the top, and all it cost you was a land that you weren't going to tap for mana anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's not really a lot of turn 1 plays.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden value in utility lands, and Reliquary Tower and the ones we mentioned are great.
Let's kind of transition away from lands and turning off your brain, the things that make you think a little bit more. What about token producers that aren't super obvious at first glance?
Yeah, exactly. Say this is more specific to a token deck, I would say. If you have a deck that cares about making tokens, you might want to consider effects that are typically played as removal, and you should still play them as removal, but in a pinch, they work as token generators.
Oh, yeah.
And these are cards like Beast Within and Generous Gift.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They do function as pseudo removal protection in the sense that someone's trying to exile your creature that you really need to keep on board. Secret Commander, potentially. Okay, so now you Beast Within your own creature. You get a 3/3 token to replace it, and now it's in your graveyard. As long as you can recur it from your graveyard, you still have access to it. You don't have to worry about it now. It's there.
Even then, say they're just going to blow it up with some single targeted removal, but it's not going to be exiled. It's going to go to the graveyard anyways. But here's the thing. You're like, well, I have this Beast Within. I need to make tokens because, say, I'm playing a Gearhead deck, or I'm trying to play another populate style deck. Well, if I have no tokens to populate, I can't populate anything. So you're like, well, this creature is going to die anyways. So you Generous Gift your own creature and you get the 3/3 elephant so that you can then populate it, and then you maybe get that creature back that died if it went to your graveyard and it's not your commander. You recur it some other way later.
Yeah, going in a slightly different direction, I'm building an Orvar deck that's Merfolk Tribal. One of the cards in the deck is Lawmage Mentor, and you read the card and it explains the card, obviously, but a lot of people ignore the whole fact that it actually produces tokens whenever you counter a target spell.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be with an instant or whatever. It can literally be with an ability. You get tokens from it.
That's cool.
And so, it builds your own little army of counter spells throughout the entire game. But here's the thing. Lord of Atlantis and Master of the Pearl Trident are both fantastic aggro pieces that now turns all those little tokens that you produce through countering spells into a potentially game-winning Alpha Strike.
Yeah, exactly. Having more tokens on the battlefield means your Merfolk lords come down, and then like Commander Merfolk plays exactly like modern Merfolk. You want a bunch of Merfolk, and then you want to give them Island Walk, make something an island, and go, all right, you die.
Or give them flying.
Flying works too, yeah.
But yeah, that's exactly it. Let's kind of move away from making yourself an obvious threat and into things that kind of, they sit on the board but not really under your control, and they don't make you a threat really.
Yeah, these are things like Zonta Sleeper Agent and Psychic Possession.
If you guys are keeping up with I Hate Your Deck, we recently saw a Xantcha deck like perform incredibly well there, because Joe was the threat the entire game, but because Xantcha wasn't on his board, no one saw him as a threat. It got moved around, and it did work. It did what it needed to do.
Yeah, and then Psychic Possession, skip your draw step. Whenever enchanted opponent draws a card, you may draw a card. Well, that goes on to an opponent, and it's like, okay, and then like it's on your side of the board. We typically tend to put these kind of cards like, okay, here, you can have this. I enchanted you. So it's sitting there. Oh, I'm going to draw cards. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to draw a bunch of cards. And then they're looking at the guy like, hey, stop drawing a bunch of cards. You're letting him draw a bunch of cards. But really, it's actually you who did the thing. You can kind of obfuscate where the threat assessment is, because it's like, oh, I'm not the threat. That's the threat. And he has it. So he's the threat.
Oh, definitely. And we see this with the curse aura type as well.
Yeah, that's very much common. It's very much something that whole entire archetype likes to do, is to obfuscate who the actual threat is.
Yeah, the less cards you have on your side of the board, the less of a threat you look like, and therefore, the more of the threat you actually become, because your game plan revolves around spreading the attention. It's actually why Group Hug kind of fits into this category with, like, Feldegriff.
Yeah.
Spreading those, what are they, Feldegriff tokens? Hippo tokens?
Yeah, they're hippos.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this person. They have a bunch of hippos. Yeah, but you're the one who gave them to them.
And yet, you don't look like the threat. You're helping people out.
Yeah, if you're clever about it. Oh, Rachel has 1 billion hippo tokens. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to kill you with hippos. And it's like, okay, well, we need to deal with Rachel. It's like, yeah, but it was the other person who gave them to her. So,
yeah.
Like,
I like how we keep referencing I Hate Your Deck in this episode. It's great.
Well, you got me thinking about it, and you got me thinking about all their games. But then, so the cool thing about this is you're obfuscating the threat, which gets into politics, which gets into our next segment, which is sort of the political style cards where you can sort of leverage your card to do the thing you want your opponent to do anyways.
Take this slightly differently too, though. There are multiple lines of play with these sorts of effects. We're going to talk about scheming symmetry here. This is going to be the entire segment here, is just talking about scheming symmetry.
Yeah.
And how to abuse it both politically and non-politically. And so let's be nice. We'll start politically. Dave, you start us out here.
So, like, if you want to be a real jerk, you're like, hey, would you like to tutor for a card? And you go, yes, I would. And you're like, okay, scheming symmetry. And they go to start looking for the card. You're like, oh, wait, hold on. What's this? My 3 mana slipped. Oh, I've got a opposition agent. And then at that point, you're not even really political. It becomes a 1 mana tutor for 2 things.
Yeah, it's just a really, really rude way to do it.
It's really mean.
Yeah, it's super, super strong, and
it's also something you probably shouldn't do unless you're able to win, or you can use whatever it is that you got from your opponent to shut your opponent down, because the second you do that, they're going to be mad at you, they're going to come after you, and the other players who are in the game are probably also going to come at you too.
Now, Dave, there is a way to do this and be slightly nicer about it. You could run an Aven Mind Sensor. And once again, 3 mana, you're obviously playing Esper at this point, but if an opponent researches their library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead. Yeah, okay, look for your answer, but it better be in the top 4, or you're not helping out here.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's also a good way to shut off supposed downside of scheming symmetry, and it becomes a 1 mana tutor, which is insanely good.
Although, I do have a way to make it slightly better.
Oh yeah? What's that?
There is a certain planeswalker that was released in War of the Spark. It's an Ashiok, and her static ability states opponents cannot search their library for cards. So it shuts off fetch lands, it shuts off their own tutors, but more importantly, it shuts off Scheming Symmetry's secondary effect. So now you got a 1-mana tutor that just says, no, you can't actually, search your library for a thing. You don't need to be political anymore. You can be an asshole and a bully.
Yeah, you just get all the upside, none of the downside.
I will take this one step further, though. There's another way to play her, and this is one of my favorite lines to play. You make sure she's in your hand, and you play the Scheming Symmetry. You turn around. After it resolves, you then play Ashiok. You -1 her on the opponent who just searched the library.
That's rude.
No one sees it coming. All the opponent's graveyards are exiled, so sorry, reanimate decks. You're not going to be happy with me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually typically why I play Ashiok. I play him as a graveyard hoser.
Oh, yeah.
It's an it. Who cares? Pronouns are stupid. Shut up.
Yeah, so, Ashiok Dream Render is fantastic for this.
By the way, the channel's pronouns is fuck and off.
According to Dave, I don't care what you call me.
Actually, no, according to our Twitter.
Oh, okay.
I stuck that in the Twitter bio.
Oh, good. Yeah, so that's kind of the Ashiok multiple lines of play thing. Like, obviously, Scheming Symmetry is a fantastic bit of political play, but you don't always want to be political with it. So moving away from, like, political plays, there's also kind of this aspect in the game where we kind of just ignore aspects of rules text on cards altogether.
Yeah, things like All That Glitters, and my particular favorite here is Release to the Wind.
Yeah, so let's start with the less interesting of the two. All That Glitters. The important line of text there that people often ignore is artifacts you control.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you see this all the time in Enchantress decks. It goes right along Ethereal Armor.
Yeah, exactly. Ethereal Armor was the one I thought of. And for 1 more mana, this thing says artifacts you control. So let's playing you're playing the Akiri equipment deck. All right. Well, this might not be an equipment, but for 2 mana, it's going to count all of those equipment and other random artifacts lying around. It's like, all right, get +1/+1 for each of those. And yeah, that's a very easy to overlook aspect of a card like this.
Yeah, and it works really nicely in Akiri Fearless Voyager. That was the card you're looking for. I have it in Dakin Blackblade because I'm already running the equipment version of it.
Nice.
Being able to just, like, double up that effect makes it so useful.
Exactly.
And, hey, we're playing Commander here. What's the most common card in, like, 80% of decks? Soul Ring.
Yeah.
You're guaranteed to have at least 1 artifact in your deck anyways.
Yeah. And then, especially non-green decks, where your ramp has to come mostly from mana rocks. All right, it could just be 1 card in a deck where, like, you have a commander that's kind of beefy. If there's an aspect where you might want to try and kill somebody with commander damage, a card like this is really worth it.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But then if you're trying to save your commander, maybe from a board wipe or some targeted removal, there's another card that's really good at this that often gets overlooked in that aspect.
Release to the Wind. Yeah, the reason why it's under this category is the second big rule text on the card. It says, exile target non-land permanent. Its controller may cast it without paying its mana cost for as long as it remains exiled. So that's kind of the important part there.
Right. Okay, so what this does is it's 3 mana to be like, oh, my commander or my really important creature is about to die, so I'm going to basically tuck it away in exile, and then when I need it again, when it's safe to come back out of hiding, I can just recast it and not pay anything. Now here's the thing. Say somebody's about to path to exile your Ulamog.
Ooh, yeah, you don't want that.
For 3 mana, you go, all right, I'm just going to tuck this guy away, and then guess what? You get the cast triggers and everything for free.
Which is super, super good.
Oh.
You don't really see that sort of value very often.
Yeah. Moving on from that, these are the types of cards that have hidden value because the aspect of what it does, the text, gets ignored or overlooked.
Yeah.
But then there's cards where it does multiple different things.
Oh, yeah.
And these are things like split cards, the Aftermath cards, the adventure cards from Throne of Eldraine, where, like, you look at the card, you read it, like, all right, cool. Well, oftentimes, the creature side might not be that great, but here's the thing. The spell side, the adventure side, might be an effect that you actually want to use, and then it just happens to also be a creature. You're ignoring the value of the fact that it's a spell that you might want to be playing anyways that has a whole creature stapled to it that you can then cast later.
Yeah, this even goes into DMFCs, though, because, like, a lot of those cards, like, okay, 1 half may be crap, but at least it has a second half to it, whether it be a land, an instant, a sorcery, whatever. Like, it has something that makes it worth running in your deck.
Yeah, like this, like that card that M is always mentioning. The actual creature side of this thing, Augmenter Pugilist, but you flip it over, Echoing Equation, that's pretty fucking dope.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, if somebody, looked at this first glance, like, why would I play this card? As long as you control 8 or more lands, Augmenter Pugilist gets +5/+5. Well, I mean, that makes him an 8/8 for 3. Like, that's actually pretty good.
That's pretty good rate. That's really good rate.
Like, he passes the vanilla test by himself as a 3/3 with trample. Then he just gets huge. And then on the backside, it's just this ridiculous spell. He suggested it for my Reaper King deck.
That'd be good, yeah.
There, it would be absolutely insane to turn everything into a Reaper King.
Yeah.
If your commander has a triggered ability, and you can turn all of your creatures into a copy of your commander with that triggered ability, and then you can trigger all of them, that's like insane value.
Oh shit, dude, I have a whole board of Omnathos of Creation.
Good Lord.
Yeah, it's pretty mean. That's a real kicker.
Gross.
That's a real kicker.
Yeah.
Although, speaking of kicker...
Speaking of kicker...
we should probably talk about the kicker mechanic and the cost of that. When Dave and I first pitched this episode, one of the things we wanted to talk about was actually kicker. Specifically Into the Royal and...
Skyclay Relic.
Yeah. Kind of the value behind kicker costs and trying to break it down. And it's pretty obvious for a lot of people, but for newer players, it might not be. So Dave, what's the going rate on a draw spell? Say draw 1.
Typically, the rate is 2 mana.
And then what's the typical going rate on a bounce target creature spell?
Well, the cheapest you can do it is unsummon for 1 mana.
Okay, but let's expand it past creatures and let's go target non-land permanent.
Yeah, then you're talking like a disperse and type of stuff. So yeah, that tends to be 2 mana as well.
So Into the Royal for 4 mana with the kicker, that seems to be about the going rate for both sides of that effect, right?
Exactly. So if you have the 4 mana, you get both effects on 1 card. And once again, in Commander, opportunity costs. If you put 2 cards into your deck, they have 1 of each of these effects. You've lost out on 1 card slot because this gives you both of those effects for about the same price as it would cost to cast both of them at the same time.
Okay, but let's do this one step better, though. Let's look at Skyclay Relic.
Ooh, I like that card.
What's the kicker on that one? What does it do? It's a 3 mana indestructible artifact.
Yep, it is literally a Darksteel ingot.
And here's the thing, though. The kicker cost is 3.
Which is another Darksteel ingot.
And you'd be like, okay, well, that means I just paid 2 Darksteel ingots for 6. That doesn't seem like a good rate.
Yeah. Here's the kicker. When Skyclay Relic enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create 2 tapped tokens that are copies of Skyclay Relic. So yeah, you pay an additional 3 for what would essentially be another Skyclay Relic, but you got 2. So you literally paid 1.5 mana for those token copies of Skyclay Relic.
9 mana of value for the low cost of 6 mana on your side.
And then they're indestructible, so they're not going to get blown up.
Yep.
They can't target them with normal removal. They'd have to be bounced or exiled.
Not a lot of people are going to waste bounce or exile effects on an artifact.
Exactly. Like, that's premium removal that's going to be saved for stuff. So if you really think about it, you're getting a rebate because once you untap, you paid the 3 mana for the extra 2 copies. So if you get to untap with them, you're getting 2 of that mana back later.
And this is one of the few kicker cards I actually like.
I'm actually thinking about I should run this. Like, you should run this in decks where it cares about how many artifacts you have.
Oh, for sure. I typically don't like kicker. The other thing, though, is like because it comes at such a great rate, it can slot into almost any deck because it produces any color of mana.
Exactly.
You're not worried about it.
Yeah, so this goes back to like what I was saying about Chromatic Lantern. Because it's 1 more mana normally than what you would want. It is a 3 mana rock, and we tend to favor 2 mana rocks. But what you get for the 1 extra mana is you get it indestructible, and for the opportunity cost within the deck, you get the option of having basically 3 of these in your deck instead of just 1.
All right, Dave, you convinced me. Turning off my brain might not be such a bad thing here.
You should do it more often.
Yeah, I really should. Like right now.
Yeah, you're going to turn your brain off and go to bed.
Yeah, I'm Vorin Chris, no Fort Raider.
And I'm Dave, Guru of S'mores. Thanks for spending some time with us.
And thanks for watching.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Dave, what's going on, buddy?
Which legendary creature would make a good cop on the moon?
Oh God, I don't know what legendary creature would make a good cop on the moon.
Audric, Lunarch Marshal.
Oh my God. My boy, my poor boy. What'd they do to
him? Audric, what did you guys do to Audric? You bastards!
Oh, I miss you, Audric. You used to be such a good boy.
You were such a good boy. You were the goodest of boys.
That's right. Now you're a man.
God damn you, Mark Rosewater.
Not his fault.
I know it's not. I'm just, being one of those obtuse dickheads that blame Mark for everything.
Yeah. Good thing Mark has a good sense of humor.
Yeah, he does. We love you, Mark.